Welcome to Paranormal News Today. What is PNT? Think of this show as a combination crucible and forum, a way to examine the myriad truths that make up our everyday existence. What will we be covering? In this series, we'll be examining the odd, strange, and noteworthy paranormal and normal stories of the day. Whatever catches the eye, appeals to our interests, or makes us speak out. But we cannot do it alone. As such, we invite you, the viewer, to submit ideas for subjects you would like to see in the future. Give me the far-fetched, the unusual. Send me the urban legends you heard as a child. Tell me about the thing under your bed, or the monster in your closet. Give me your poor, huddled weirdos yearning to be free. But now, let's get right to it. Are you living in the same reality you were born in? Are you who you think you are? Many people now believe quite firmly that certain details of their lives and memories have been subtly altered. Quotes and scenes from beloved movies are suddenly different. Famous biblical figures are now depicted with horns. Familiar products have undergone logo and name changes, or suddenly no longer exist at all. Once noticed, these changes seem to strike a deep emotional reaction from those who experience the Mandela effect. There are too many examples of this odd phenomenon to list here, so for brevity's sake, let's just cover the top 3 Mandela effects. Let's begin with this phenomenon's namesake. Number 1. Nelson Mandela's death. Although initially committed to non-violent protest, in association with the South African Communist Party, Nelson Mandela co-founded a militant group in 1961 and led a sabotage campaign against apartheid-based government. In 1962, he was arrested for conspiring to overthrow the state and sentenced to life imprisonment in the Rivonia trial. Mandela served 27 years in prison, initially on Robben Island, and later in Pollsmoor Prison and Victor Verster Prison. Amid international pressure and growing fear of a racial civil war, President F.W. de Klerk released him in 1990. Mandela and de Klerk negotiated an end to apartheid and organized the 1994 multiracial general election, in which Mandela led the ANC to victory and became president of South Africa. After serving with distinction and suffering from a prolonged respiratory infection, Mandela died on December 5th, 2013, at the age of 95. At least that's how history remembers it. But whose history is correct? Many believe that Mandela died not in 2013, but in prison sometime in the late 1990s, right before he was to be released. They have clear memories of television coverage of his funeral. There are even variant memories where Mandela was assassinated after his release, triggering violent protests which eventually led to sweeping social changes. Which do you remember? Number 2. The Berenstain Bears. The Berenstain Bears is a series of children's books created by Stan and Jan Berenstain. The books feature a family of anthropomorphic grizzly bears who generally learn a moral or safety-related lesson throughout the course of each story. Since the 1962 debut of the first Berenstain Bears books, The Big Honey Hunt, the series has grown to over 300 titles, which have sold approximately 260 million copies in 23 different languages. The Berenstain Bears franchise has also expanded well beyond the books, encompassing 2 television series and a wide variety of other products. Most of us will remember these books from our childhood. We ran across them during those interminable waits in dental or doctor's offices, where the adventures of Pa, Ma, Brother, and Sister Bear helped us to while away the time and provided us with some moral fiber to build our character. We spent those hours of nerve-wracking anticipation of the whine of the dentist's drill, carefully studying those slightly saccharine stories intently, anything to take our minds off the upcoming pain. Which is what makes this one so jarring for many of us. Look closely at the spelling. Do you remember it as Stein, or, as it is recorded today, S-T-A-I-N. Personally, I'm an S-T-E-I-N man myself, and I'll swear to my dying day that this is the correct spelling. After all, lying is wrong. The Bears taught me that. Number 3. Jiffy, or Jif, peanut butter. In 1955, Procter & Gamble bought Big Top peanut butter from William T. Young of Kentucky, and after altering the recipe, sweetening it by adding sugar and molasses, they rebranded it as Jif in an attempt to compete with the other two major brands, Skippy and Peter Pan. Since then, we've been eating the creamy and crunchy stuff by the bread sliceful. However, to many, Jif is a word used to describe a picture on a computer, not the beloved peanut butter Jiffy that they remember from their childhood. Jiffy. Many remember the distinctively colored logo and the commercial featuring the catchphrase, "The snack that can be made in a jiffy." I remember this one myself, and this was the first instance of the Mandela effect that I personally experienced. Sometime during the late 1980s, I noticed that I could no longer find the Jiffy peanut butter that I was familiar with from long summer visits at my grandmother's house. Instead, I only found this strange imposter, Jif. Well, I tried a jar, and it didn't taste the same, so I later switched to Skippy. Yes, I am a peanut butter brand preference trader. For my part, I had simply thought that the company had underwent a rebranding or redesign. This was the age of Crystal Pepsi and New Coke, after all. It was not until I later heard about the Mandela effect that slightly strange incidents from my youth took on a new relevance and stuck in the back of my mind, the way a bite of peanut butter and jelly sandwich sticks to the roof of your mouth. Only I didn't have a cool glass of milk to wash this down with. So this brings us to the logical questions. If we accept these events as we remember them, then what is going on? And what is the cause of the disparity, and what, if anything, can we do about it? There are many theories as to what could be causing the Mandela effect, but we'll concentrate on the most prevalent and fascinating. Number 1. Fractured realities. Due to either dabbling by CERN with the Large Hadron Collider, or our experimentations with the new quantum computers, scientists may have somehow torn open portals, or rifts, between the quantum realities that exist all around us. What are quantum realities, you ask? To understand this basic principle of quantum mechanics, imagine that for each decision you make throughout the day, from which coffee cup to use in the morning to what you eat for lunch, there are two or more realities or worlds that exist where you made the other decision, took the other path, so to speak. This would mean that we live in an infinite multiverse of worlds, universes, realities that are constantly forming all around us, each just as valid as our own, but separate and slightly different. What if, in our scientific explorations, we have violated the barriers between those realities, causing them to leak through into our own, or an even more frightening prospect, for all of our realities to begin to merge and interact in unexpected ways? Number 2. The holodeck theory. When Elon Musk stated in 2015 that he believed there was strong evidence that we are in fact living in a simulation, he was echoing the thoughts of certain corners of the scientific community. Are we in fact living in a so-called Matrix world simulation? Well, since our perception of reality is dependent upon our senses, and these can be influenced by a variety of factors from chemical to electronic, is it logical to assume that one day we could provide the proper stimulus to create not a virtual reality, but rather an ultimate reality? Is it further possible that someone has already done this and that we are the result? That what we experience as the Mandela effect are simply patches or updates to our operating environment, much like updating your computer? This would, of course, depend upon some of us noticing these changes, being resistant to the changes in our memories. We, lucky few, are rejecting the alterations that the rest of humanity fails to notice. And what if one was to rise up and resist the machines? The philosophizing of the Wachowski brothers aside, this does propose several compelling questions. Who would build such a thing, and why? Are we the puppets of an alien species, a race of machines run amok, or perhaps a living time capsule of a now dead civilization? Did we in fact experience an extinction-level apocalyptic event and back ourselves up electronically in order to preserve humanity? Would we know if we had? And who is left to maintain the equipment, if anyone at all? Number 3. Confabulation. We here at Paranormal News Today strive to examine all possibilities, and we would be remiss if we did not apply Occam's razor. In the world of psychiatry, confabulation is known as a disturbance of memory. It is defined as the production of a fabricated, distorted, or misinterpreted memory about oneself or the world, but without the conscious intent to deceive. Individuals who confabulate present incorrect memories ranging from subtle alterations to bizarre fabrications, and are generally very confident about their recollections, despite contradictory evidence. Is this the case? Are we simply misremembering details, confusing one image or thing with another? Studies have shown that our memories are not the ironclad things we believe them to be. The mind is easily led or misdirected, a technique magicians utilize to amaze and entertain us. Are we then feeding into each other's confabulations? Like a subconscious game of telephone played in our id, are we influencing our own memories by seeking patterns where there are none? As humans, we have a profound need to bring order to the sensory chaos we are bombarded with, and when we cannot, our minds can fill in the blanks for us. We must rely on hard sensory proof to be certain, things we can touch, taste, see, and smell. A purely mental phenomenon would have no hard proof, would it? But that's material for another time and another episode. We here at Paranormal News Today invite you to investigate further and draw your own conclusions. We thank you for watching PNT and welcome your comments and suggestions for future episodes. Click like, share, or subscribe below to help support us and bring you the stories of the strange, weird, and bizarre that you want to see. I'm your host, reminding you to keep an open mind, because a closed one shuts out the truth.